The Hall of Titans was the most visited place on the Orion, the pride of the Zalari fleet. It was not just a ship, it was a moving city of warriors, scholars, and leaders. Inside the hall, golden pillars rose high, meeting a glass ceiling that revealed the stars beyond. In the center of the hall stood a pedestal made from black crystal, and on it rested the sword of Solaris. The sword was not ordinary. Its long silver blade had strange lines running through it, like rivers of light frozen in metal. The hilt was wrapped in a material no one could name, and the guard curved like the wings of some long-forgotten creature. It was said that the sword was over 10,000 years old and had been created by a civilization long vanished. The Zalari believed it was a gift from the stars, a test for the worthy. The legend said that only one chosen by the stars could lift it. Not just anyone, not even the strongest warrior could move it an inch. The sword was locked to the pedestal by something beyond normal technology. It was called the quantum anchor, a force that made it heavier than any mountain, unless the sword itself decided otherwise. Jalara stood near the pedestal with her arms crossed. She was tall for a Zalari, her dark blue armor reflecting the lights above. Her golden eyes followed the crowd of visitors moving through the hall. She had been guarding the sword for several months and had seen countless beings try to pull it free. None had even made it shift. To her, it was a source of amusement. She spotted a small group entering from the far side of the hall. They were not Zalari. They were humans. The one in front was Marcus Hale, a diplomat from Earth. He was dressed simply compared to the shining armor and robes of the others. He walked with quiet steps, his eyes scanning the sword. Jalara's lips curved into a smirk. Humans were new to the Galactic Council, only joining a few years ago. The Zalari respected strong warriors, and while humans had shown bravery in exploration, they were still seen as weaker, slower, and less advanced. In Jalara's mind, they had no business even thinking about the sword of Solaris. Marcus stopped a few steps away from the pedestal. He looked at the sword for a long moment. The light from above caught the strange markings on the blade, and his eyes seemed to focus on them as if he were reading a secret message. "You're staring too long, human," Jalara said, her voice carrying a hint of challenge. "Do you think you can lift it?" Marcus turned to her, his expression calm. "I was only admiring it," he replied in a quiet voice. "It reminds me of something from home." Jalara raised an eyebrow. "From home? On your little blue planet, do you keep unmovable swords on display?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Not exactly. But we have stories about swords and stones, waiting for the right person." The other Zalari nearby laughed at that. One of them, a younger officer, stepped forward and spoke loudly. "The sword of Solaris is no story, human. It has been tried by champions from 100 worlds. Even Jalara herself could not lift it." Marcus looked at the pedestal again. "Maybe it's not about strength." The words made Jalara laugh, the sound echoing through the hall. "Not about strength? Human, I have seen the strongest. Machines fail to move it. Do you think you will solve it with soft hands and clever words?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I think I'd like to try." The crowd nearby turned their heads. Even the tourists who had been walking past stopped. To watch, Jalara felt a spark of mischief. If this human wanted to embarrass himself, why not let him? "Very well," she said, stepping aside with a mocking bow. "Try. But I warn you, the sword will not move for you." Marcus walked slowly to the pedestal. He did not immediately grab the hilt like most challengers. Instead, he walked around it once, looking at the carvings on the black crystal base. Jalara watched with a puzzled frown. The carvings were old and strange, circles, lines, and dots arranged in patterns. Most saw them as decoration, but Marcus traced them with his fingers, as if they meant something to him. "You're wasting time," Jalara called out, her voice dripping with amusement. The sword is not a puzzle. It is a trial of strength. Marcus didn't answer. He stepped back to the front of the pedestal and rested his hand on the hilt. The metal felt cold, yet alive somehow, like it was aware of his touch. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. For a moment, Marcus simply stood there, breathing slowly. He did not strain or pull yet. He was studying the way his hand fit the grip, the way the pedestal seemed to hum faintly beneath it. Something in his eyes told Jalara he was thinking far deeper than anyone else had. Finally, he wrapped both hands around the hilt. The hall grew quiet. The air felt heavier, as if the sword itself was watching. And then, nothing happened. Marcus did not pull. He let go and stepped back, looking at the pedestal once more. Jalara's smirk widened. "I see the great human champion is afraid to fail," she teased. Marcus simply smiled again. "I'm not afraid. I'm just not finished looking." The crowd erupted in laughter, but a few Zalari looked curious. There was something in the way Marcus moved. Slow, careful, not desperate like the others. He wasn't trying to win the crowd. He was trying to understand the sword. Jalara folded her arms, watching him closely now. She had expected a quick failure and a red-faced human leaving the hall, but Marcus was different. He didn't seem bothered by the mockery. In fact, he looked like someone who had just found the first piece of a hidden answer. The hall's lights dimmed slightly as the ship passed near a distant star, and the markings on the sword glowed faintly for just a heartbeat, Marcus noticed. His eyes narrowed, and a quiet thought passed through his mind. It's not about lifting it. It's about unlocking it. He didn't say it out loud, not yet. But Jalara caught the sharp focus in his gaze. For the first time, she felt the smallest flicker of curiosity. Still, she pushed the thought aside. After all, no human had ever surprised her before. The quiet hum of the Hall of Titans was soon replaced by the soft chatter of visitors. A group of Zalari warriors had gathered near the pedestal, their armor gleaming under the golden lights. Jalara remained at the front, leaning against one of the tall crystal pillars. Her sharp golden eyes never left Marcus. She had expected him to give up after his slow, strange inspection of the sword. Yet, instead of walking away, the human seemed even more interested. His hands rested loosely behind his back as he circled the pedestal for a second time. "Still studying, human?" one of the younger warriors called out, his voice carrying a mocking tone. Marcus gave a polite nod. "I've learned something," he said softly, "but I'm not ready to lift it yet." The crowd chuckled at his answer. To the Zalari, strength and speed were proof of courage. Careful thinking was often mistaken for hesitation. Jalara stepped forward, her tall frame casting a shadow over the human. "Do you know what I think, Marcus of Earth?" she asked. "I imagine you have an opinion," Marcus replied, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I think," she continued, "you are afraid of failing. You hide behind your careful steps because you know this sword will not move for you." Marcus studied her face for a moment. "And if it does move?" he asked calmly. That question made the warriors laugh even louder. The sound bounced off the high golden walls like distant thunder. Jalara's smirk deepened. "If you can, move the sword of Solaris even a single finger's width," she said. "I will award you the Zalari honor crest with my own hands." The words drew murmurs from the crowd. The honor crest was not a simple medal. It was a sign of deep respect. Among the Zalari, given only to warriors who had proven themselves through great feats. For her to promise such a thing to a human was bold. Marcus didn't seem fazed. "And if I fail?" Jalara shrugged. "Then you will do something for me. Something I choose." The murmurs grew louder. A challenge like this was rare, especially between species. Marcus tilted his head slightly. That sounds fair, but I have a condition. Her eyes narrowed slightly. A condition? Yes, he said, stepping closer so they were almost face to face. When I try, no one interferes. No scanners, no strength-measuring devices, no distractions, just me and the sword. Jalara considered his request. It was unusual, but it didn't sound like a trick. Agreed, she said. But you will try now. Not tomorrow, not later. Now. Marcus shook his head. No, I'll try tomorrow morning. The warriors frowned in confusion. Why wait? One of them demanded. Because, Marcus said, glancing at the markings again, the sword was built for someone who understands it, and understanding takes time. The Zalari crowd exchanged puzzled looks. Many believed the human was simply delaying the humiliation. Still, Jalara found herself curious despite her earlier certainty. His calmness didn't match the fear she expected. Very well, she said at last. Tomorrow at first light you will try. If you fail, you will carry my banner in the next warrior's parade, and you will do it in front of the council of races. The human smiled. I can agree to that. That evening, word of the challenge spread across the Orion. By nightfall, almost everyone on the ship had heard about the human who dared to accept Jalara's bet. Messages traveled through the ship's networks, carrying jokes and predictions. Some believed he wouldn't even show up in the morning. Others thought he might make a fool of himself in front of the largest audience the hall had seen in years. Marcus didn't seem bothered by any of it. In his small guest quarters, he sat with a tablet, reviewing the images he had taken of the pedestal's carvings. He enlarged them, tracing the shapes with his finger. They weren't random decorations. They were maps, or perhaps instructions. He remembered something from Earth's own history, old devices with hidden mechanisms, puzzles that could only be opened by pressing the right sequence. The lines on the pedestal formed patterns that matched certain constellations. The dots marked specific star systems. The strange curves might represent travel routes. If the sword truly had a quantum anchor, it could be more than a physical lock. It might respond to the correct combination of touches, like a coded key. And if that was true, then all. The warriors who had tried to pull it with raw strength had been trying the wrong way entirely. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The faint hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the room. He closed his eyes for a moment, imagining the sword in its full glory. It wasn't the weapon itself that interested him. It was the mind of whoever had made it. Meanwhile, Jalara sat in her private chamber polishing her armor. She told herself she wasn't thinking about the human, but her mind returned to him again and again. His calmness unsettled her. Most challengers either attacked the sword with brute force or gave up quickly. He had done neither. She remembered the brief glow on the sword's markings when the ship had passed near a star earlier in the day. The human had noticed it too. She had seen his eyes sharpen at that moment. Still, she dismissed the thought with a shake of her head. Even if he has some theory, the sword has rejected champions far stronger and far wiser than him, she told herself. Yet, deep inside, she felt a small flicker of doubt. The next morning came quickly. The Hall of Titans was already crowded long before the first light cycle began. Word had traveled far, not only across the ship, but to other vessels docked nearby. Holographic cameras floated above, ready to broadcast the attempt to countless viewers. Jalara arrived early, her armor gleaming, her banner standing proudly near the pedestal. She spotted Marcus entering from the far side. He wore the same simple clothes as before, carrying nothing but his steady expression. "You came?" she said, her voice neutral. "I keep my word," Marcus replied. The crowd's chatter quieted as the two stood before the sword. The golden light from above bathed the pedestal, making the blade's strange markings shimmer faintly. "This is it," Jalara announced loudly. "The human will attempt to move the sword of Solaris. If he succeeds, he earns the honor crest. If he fails, he will carry my banner before the council." Marcus stepped forward. He placed his hands gently on the pedestal, not the hilt. He closed his eyes briefly, breathing slowly, as though feeling for something beneath the surface. Jalara watched closely. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment his quiet confidence would finally crumble. What she didn't know was that Marcus had spent the night memorizing every curve, every star, every tiny marking. He was no longer guessing. When he opened his eyes, there was no hesitation. The Hall of Titans was silent now. The noise of the crowd had faded into a tense stillness. Every eye was on Marcus as he stood before the sword of Solaris. The tall golden pillars glowed faintly in the soft morning light, and the blade shimmered, with an almost living presence. Marcus didn't rush. He placed one hand on the hilt, the other resting lightly against the black crystal pedestal. His eyes didn't move to the crowd, not even to Jalara. They were fixed on the carvings running along the base, the same ones he had studied the night before. From the outside, it looked like hesitation. Jalara crossed her arms, certain. The human was simply stalling. Any moment now, she thought, he'll pull with all his might, fail, and leave red-faced. That was how it always went, but Marcus's mind was calm. He remembered Earth's old mechanical locks, puzzles that opened not with force, but with patience and precision. The carvings on the pedestal told a story. Circles marked planets. Lines marked the paths between them. At first they seemed random, but after hours of study he had realized they matched the roots of ancient star charts. There was a sequence hidden here, a path, like a map telling the sword who was worthy. He began moving his fingers over the carvings. The crowd frowned in confusion. This wasn't how challengers behaved. They expected him to grab the hilt and yank. Instead, he pressed 3 small dots in a row, then traced a curved line leading to another circle. A faint hum stirred beneath the pedestal. Only those standing very close could hear it. A sound like distant machinery awakening. Jalara's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to cut through the silence. Marcus didn't look up. "Talking to the sword," he said simply. Some of the younger warriors laughed quietly at that, but their laughter faded as Marcus's hands kept moving, touching one pattern after another in deliberate order. The hum grew stronger, a vibration in the floor beneath their feet. Jalara's mind raced. Could this be the secret? For centuries, the sword had been treated as a trial of strength, but what if that had been wrong? What if the key had been hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone who saw beyond muscle and armor? She forced herself to keep her expression neutral, but her tail twitched, a small sign of unease. Marcus finished the sequence. He stepped back, letting his hand rest on the hilt once more. This time, the sword felt different beneath his grip. Warmer. The faint hum was no longer distant. It pulsed through the hilt into his hands like a heartbeat. He tightened his fingers slightly. The crowd leaned forward, but Marcus didn't pull yet. Instead, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. To him, this wasn't just a test in front of an alien audience. This was a moment about proving something deeper, that humans, underestimated by so many, had a place among the stars not because of brute force, but because of understanding, curiosity, and the ability to see patterns others missed. The sword responded to his stillness. A ripple of light moved through the strange glowing lines along the blade. The markings that had been dull moments ago now shone faintly, as if the sword was waking from a long sleep. Gasps echoed through the hall. Jalara's breath caught, though she didn't realize it. Marcus spoke softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not about strength. It's about listening." Then, Without any visible strain, he pulled. The sound was like metal sliding against stone, but softer, almost like the whisper of wind. The sword rose, not fast, but smoothly, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. The crowd froze, in disbelief. Jalara's golden eyes widened. For a split second, she forgot her pride, forgot the challenge, forgot the bet. She was simply staring at the impossible happening right in front of her. Marcus lifted the sword of Solaris free from its pedestal. The light from above caught its blade, sending a shimmering beam across the hall. The hum in the air faded into a deep silence, the kind of silence that comes only after something historic has happened. For several heartbeats, no one moved. Then, a voice from the back broke the stillness. He lifted it. Others began murmuring, the words growing louder. Some Zalari looked shocked, others looked almost fearful. The few alien visitors from other species whispered among themselves, recording every moment for their homeworlds. Jalara stepped forward slowly, her eyes fixed on the sword. She had never seen it free from the pedestal. She had never thought she would see it free. How? She asked, her voice quiet, almost unwilling to believe her own question. Marcus looked at her, the sword resting easily in his hands. It wasn't locked by strength, he said. It was waiting for someone to understand it. Her pride as a warrior fought against the truth of his words. Part of her wanted to argue, to claim there must have been some trick. But deep down, she knew she had seen no trick. She had seen a puzzle solved, and a human, the one she had mocked, had done it. The murmurs of the crowd grew into a roar. Some shouted questions. Others demanded he show them how it was done. A few even called for the council to be informed immediately. Marcus didn't respond to them. He stepped forward and held the sword out to Jalara, offering it to her with both hands. The gesture caught her off guard. "It's yours now," he said. "I only lifted it. You're its guardian." She hesitated, looking between his calm face and the weapon she had sworn to protect. Slowly, she reached out and took it. It felt lighter than she expected, as if the sword itself approved of her holding it now that its challenge had been met. Jalara didn't thank him, not yet. Her pride wouldn't allow it. But there was a new weight in her gaze, not of scorn, but of respect. As Marcus stepped back, the hall erupted into more voices, more questions, more astonished exclamations. Somewhere in the chaos, Jalara heard a thought she would never forget. The humans are not what we thought they were. It was the first crack in the wall of underestimation that had surrounded Marcus's people since they joined the galactic stage, and it wouldn't be the last. The Hall of Titans buzzed with a nervous energy. Even though the sword of Solaris now rested free in Jalara's hands, the crowd had not yet fully processed what had just happened. Whispers turned to questions, and questions turned to stunned silence as the weight of the moment settled in. Jalara, the proud Zalari warrior, stood tall but visibly shaken. The sword felt lighter in her grip than ever before. This was a moment she had never expected, and it left her unsure. For centuries, the sword had been a symbol of strength and honor among the Zalari. Now, a human had unlocked it with nothing but understanding and calmness. The hall, once filled with laughter and mockery toward Marcus, now held an atmosphere thick with respect. The other warriors who had doubted Marcus lowered their heads or stared in silence. Many of them exchanged glances, the kind that said, "We have been wrong." Marcus himself stood quietly near the edge of the crowd. His eyes were calm, but inside, a quiet pride bloomed. He had not come to prove strength. He had come to prove that wisdom and patience could open doors stronger than any muscle. Jalara finally broke the silence. "Show me how you did it," she said, her voice steady but filled with wonder. Marcus stepped forward, lifting the sword carefully. "The sword isn't locked by power," he explained. "It's bound by a code, a pattern, a language of stars and paths. It waits for the right touch, the right order. He turned to the black crystal pedestal and placed the sword gently down. Then he pressed a series of symbols carved into the base. The glow along the blade brightened, shining blue and silver. The crowd leaned in, eyes wide, as the swords. Light traced patterns through the hall's golden pillars. "The sword listens," Marcus said. "It responds to knowledge, not force. Whoever made it knew that strength alone is not enough. You must understand what holds it to the world." Jalara stared at the glowing sword. "But why have we always believed it was strength?" "Because strength is easy to see," Marcus replied. "Understanding takes time. It is invisible until you look closely." The murmurs of the crowd grew into voices of agreement. Some began whispering about the meaning of the sword and the ancient civilization that had created it. Many wondered how much knowledge had been lost over thousands of years. Suddenly, the Council of Races was summoned by the ship's loudspeakers. The highest leaders of the Orient and its allies gathered in the central chamber. Jalara and Marcus were called to present their discovery. In the chamber, the council sat around a massive round table, faces stern and serious. Jalara held the sword of Solaris, now fully free from its pedestal and glowing faintly. Marcus stood beside her, ready to explain. The council leader, an elder Zalari named Vorek, spoke first. "Jalara, Marcus, what you have done is without precedent. The sword has resisted champions for centuries. This changes what we know of its power." Marcus nodded respectfully. The sword was not meant to be lifted by force alone. It was designed as a test of mind as well as body. Vorek's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Then we must learn its language. The stars it points to, the paths it marks, they may lead us to lost knowledge." Jalara stepped forward. "I admit I was wrong to mock him. The human has proven that there is more to strength than muscle. Perhaps this is the start of a new era, where we combine our wisdom." The council murmured in agreement. Plans were quickly made to send teams to study the sword's markings and the star charts embedded within it. The news would soon spread across many worlds. Back in the Hall of Titans, the crowd had gathered once more, buzzing with excitement and respect. Marcus was no longer just a diplomat. He had become a symbol of what humans could achieve. Jalara approached him quietly. "You have changed more than just my opinion," she said softly. "You have changed the future of the Zalari." Marcus smiled gently. "We all have a role to play. Sometimes, the greatest strength is knowing when to listen." As the crowd cheered quietly, the sword's glow pulsed once more, a silent promise that the stars still held secrets waiting for those willing to understand them. The news of Marcus Hale's feat spread like wildfire through the Orient and across the surrounding star systems. It was not just a story of a human pulling a sword. It was the story of a human unlocking an ancient mystery with nothing but calm mind and sharp insight. For the Zalari and many other species, it was a moment that challenged everything they thought about humanity. The council chambers were crowded again. Leaders from dozens of worlds had gathered, eager to hear more. Details about the sword and the man who had pulled it free. Marcus stood beside Jalara, both of them calm but aware of the weight they now carried. The room buzzed with excitement, questions, and a new respect. Elder Vorek began the meeting. "This event marks a turning point. The Sword of Solaris has tested champions for millennia. None succeeded. Now, a human has not only lifted it, but understood it. We must listen to what this means." Some voices from the council were skeptical. "Could it have been a trick?" asked one alien delegate. "Could the sword have been tampered with?" Jalara shook her head. "I have guarded this sword for many cycles. No one but Marcus has moved it. The sword responded to his understanding." Marcus stepped forward. "The sword's design is a message. It shows us the value of knowledge, patience, and curiosity. It is a reminder that strength alone does not solve every problem. The council members nodded slowly. A young Zalari scholar named Kale spoke next. We must study the carvings more, deeply. They point to star systems no one has explored for centuries. There could be lost knowledge waiting. As the meeting continued, a plan was made. Expeditions would be organized, combining Zalari strength and human insight. They would explore the ancient star systems shown on the sword's pedestal. The future of the Galactic Council itself seemed to shift. Back on the Orion, Jalara's feelings were a mix of pride and humility. She had been the one to mock Marcus, yet now she saw his true strength. One evening, she found him standing on the observation deck, watching the stars with a quiet smile. "You have changed many minds today," she said, approaching him. Marcus turned, his eyes calm and warm. "I only showed what humans can do when given a chance." Jalara nodded. "We judged too quickly. Your patience and thoughtfulness surprised me." He looked out at the stars. Strength is important, but sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to think, when to wait, and when to act. Their conversation was quiet but meaningful. For Jalara, it was the beginning of a new respect, not just for Marcus, but for the humans as a whole. Word of the humans' achievement spread beyond the ship and the council chambers. Across many worlds, broadcasts shared the story of Marcus Hale, the man who had pulled the unliftable sword. Many who had never thought much of humans before began to reconsider. On Earth, the news sparked pride and hope. Humans had long dreamed of joining the wider galactic community. Now they had proven themselves worthy, not just by their technology or weapons, but by their minds. Back on the Orion, a festival was planned to honor the event. It was not just a celebration of one man, but a celebration of new understanding between species. Banners flew, music filled the air, and for the first time, humans and Zalari danced side by side. Jalara watched the celebrations with a smile. She had asked Marcus to be her ally in future missions, and he had accepted. Together, they planned to explore the ancient star systems the sword's carvings had revealed. But not everyone was pleased. Some older warriors whispered in corners, uneasy with the change the human success had brought. They worried that reliance on understanding and patience might weaken their warrior traditions. Others feared humans might claim too much influence in the Galactic Council. One night, a shadowy figure approached Jalara in the dim halls of the Orion. "Are you sure this human can be trusted?" the figure asked softly. Jalara's eyes flashed. "Marcus has proven more than trust. He has proven that strength comes in many forms." The figure nodded slowly but did not speak further. The question hung in the air, a reminder that change often came with resistance. For Marcus, the challenge was only beginning. The sword had opened doors, but now he had to help guide the way forward. He worked closely with Zalari scholars, learning their languages and sharing human knowledge in return. He was invited to join the Council of Races, not just as a diplomat, but as a valued advisor on exploration and ancient mysteries. His calm confidence and sharp mind earned respect, not only among humans, but across many species. Together with Jalara, Marcus prepared for their first mission beyond the known star systems. The sword's carvings pointed to a distant cluster of stars, said to hold secrets lost to time. As they boarded the exploration vessel, Marcus looked back at the Orion one last time. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. Jalara smiled. "The stars are waiting for us." And with that, they launched into the vast unknown. Two allies, different but united, ready to face whatever mysteries the galaxy held.